Welcome into another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here with my favorite episode that we do every year, a mock draft, but everybody in college football is eligible to be picked. Because, of course, Dalton, the NFL, pretty unique to other sports leagues. You have to play at least 3 years of college football before you can enter the draft. It's unlike the NBA in that aspect. The NBA only got to play 1 year of college ball. So what we did is say, okay, how about an NBA-style NFL mock draft where you could take true freshmen from this past year. You could take true sophomores from this past year, and, of course, players in this year's draft as well. So I'm really excited to kind of show how we think about the 2026 NFL draft, how we think about the 2027 NFL draft compared to this year's draft.
You know, and there's certain episodes we get to do either here on the college show or on the NFL show that I wake up and think about doing them, and I'm like, we're certainly not going to ruffle any feathers with this one, right? There's going to be no controversy at all comparing the next couple of draft classes to this current one that we have. And look, there are some people who are down in this 2025 class a little bit. I think, they think there's a lot of depth, but maybe not as much star power. Well, you add in 2 more years of eligible prospects, and you certainly add some star power in there. We're going to see that very early.
I think last year when we did this episode for the 2024 all-eligible mock draft, I think our first 7 picks were 2024 players because of how good the top of that class was. That is not the case this year. We have plenty of 2026 and 2027 guys going very early in this mock draft. And it's kind of a fun exercise to show you guys who are the top guys in upcoming drafts next year and the year after, and how we think they compare to some of the top guys in this year's class as well. So, Dalton, you had the odds picks in this mock draft. I have the evens picks. Again, anyone eligible for this year's draft, next year's draft, or even 2027, not 2028, not guys who are just entering their true freshman year, so no Bryce Underwood from Michigan or anything like that. He'll be in next year's all-eligible, most likely than not. But, Dalton, with the number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans, who seem pretty locked in on a quarterback for this year's draft, that quarterback likely being Cam Ward. Who do they take here at number 1?
That was the big debate here. Are they still locked in on that same quarterback? And the Titans were dead last in passing grade last year. So we know they're taking a quarterback in any scenario where we're having a mock draft here. But that's the big question, is the potential and what we think of these future quarterbacks, and then what we think maybe presumably of Cam Ward, who is likely to go with the actual first overall pick. But I was back and forth on it, and then I said, you know what? I have to do it. I know we haven't seen him much, but he was the number 1 high school quarterback coming out in his class. He sat for the last 2 years on the bench. He's going to get his opportunity at Texas this year. Give me Arch Manning from Texas. From the 2026 class, you know what? When in doubt, pick a Manning. We've seen it. We've seen it work 3 times already before, and I know it's a limited sample size, but a little over 100 dropbacks this past year, and a little bit of wildcat work. He would get in. Steve Sarkisian would put Arch in to get some mobile read option stuff going. And this is the thing too. That's a Manning that can run. But an 88 PFF grade in limited work last year. Made a couple of starts. Looked really good in those starts, and I think he's going to take off this year under Steve Sarkisian. It's a very quarterback-friendly offense. You have a lot of talent still. Ryan Wingo and those guys at the skill spots. C.J. Baxter. They can run the football right, but I think Arch Manning's in for a big year. When we sit here and wonder, should they have played Arch Manning? Even when Quinn Ewers came back healthy, did Arch play well enough maybe to win that job? But they're taking the patient approach. We don't necessarily even know that Arch Manning will come out in next year's draft. It could be 2026, could be 2027, but I think he's in for a big year, and that's just what sticks out to me. We've seen him play a little bit. He's already played well. He's going to be seasoned in that offense with 2 years on the bench behind Quinn Ewers already, and I just think, again, it comes back to, look, this is a Manning. He's got a great arm. He's arguably a better athlete than either Peyton or Eli were. And you're talking about a guy, again, in a quarterback-friendly offense. It's going to be centered around him. Texas didn't rush him along too early in his career. I think he's got a great opportunity to succeed this year. And I think he will be, at least right now, until we were to see him fail in SEC play or something like that. You got to think either next year or the year after that Manning's an early favorite to be the number 1 overall selection at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I think when the betting odds come out for the 2026 NFL draft, he'll probably be very high up there for the number 1 overall pick odds. And yes, this is a massive projection considering he's only started 2 games in his collegiate career against very easy opponents in those 2 games. But like we said before, he's got all the tools you look for at a quarterback position. He's very refined already. And Dalton and I both agree he probably should have been starting last year for Texas. Marina in the chat even said, Manning will come out in 2027. I'll say this. As of right now, I think their plan as a family is for him to play 2 more years of college ball, then enter the draft. So that means 2027. However, plans can change. And right now, Arch Manning is tied for the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy next year, and Texas is going to be one of the top teams in the country next year. So it's very within the realm of possibility that Arch Manning wins a Heisman Trophy and Texas wins a national championship. If that happens, I don't think he comes back to school for another year, because if that happens, he will be pretty much guaranteed to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Plans can change. I do think, yes, as of right this second, the plan is 2027. But if he wins a Heisman and they win a Natty, which are both very possible next year, I think he's coming out in 2026.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to depend. The timing of it's going to depend on the results of this season and how well it goes. Even if he just has a solid top 10 to 12 quarterback season, I think then we have a different conversation about, okay, maybe he waits one more year, because there is a little bit of a danger and a long history of guys who only made one full season of college starts, and then they go to the NFL, and that lack of experience kind of hurts them too. And look, he's certainly making enough money down there at Texas with NIL. Isn't it a reported somewhere near $6 million a year it is right now? So he's not hurting for money, and certainly the family he's coming from isn't hurting for money either. So it's not going to be a rush to go to the NFL and make money. It's going to really be about, is he ready? And is he ready right away as a presumed possible number 1 overall pick, right? For whatever team that may be. We've even cracked some jokes around here about, could it be the New Orleans Saints? Could it be? I mean, and I don't think they're bad enough to maybe get the number 1, but Indianapolis Colts, even the New York Giants. These are actually all, I know it sounds like a legacy thing. It sounds a little weird, but these are teams that would be in the running. But no matter who it is, Arch's talent is undeniable, right? Yeah. We just have to see it through a whole year or possibly 2 of SEC play. And yeah, it's projection. Yeah, it's small sample, but am I really going to be the one to doubt a Manning? I'm not going to do it.
I'm not doing it either.
Not right now. I'm not going to do it, not till we see something to doubt. Oh, yeah. And week 1 against Ohio State should be fun.
There we go.
There we go.
Sure. Well, that's going to be a really fun one. All right, number 2 overall, the Cleveland Browns. So in the action right now, they very much need a quarterback right now, obviously. But I don't think they're going to take Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall. But with everybody eligible at number 2, they would probably take a quarterback here. And what I'm going to do is dip into the 2027 NFL draft and go with DJ Lagway here, the quarterback out of Florida. Finished his true freshman year with the Gators this past season. He was the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school in 2024. He led the Power 4 in his true freshman season with an 8.8% big-time throw rate. This guy has an absolute rifle of a right arm. He had a 95.6 passing grade on deep throws. That was 3rd among all quarterbacks in college football. So he has all the arm talent in the world to make any throw in the world. However, there's still some refinement needed for DJ Lagway. Now, the accuracy is not the best. It kind of stems from inconsistent footwork, I think, right now. But if he fixes that up, and obviously he's got 2 more years of college ball to fix it up, if he does that, he has more physical talent, I think, than any other quarterback that we have in college football right now. If he, like I said before, if he refines his footwork and gets a little more accurate, he is almost a slam dunk number 1 overall pick, top 5 pick in 2027. He is that special of a kid.
And you could just feel the energy change around the Florida Gators when they handed Lagway the job. I know Graham Mertz got hurt earlier in the year, and then they kind of stuck with Lagway, and they got the momentum going through the second half. You're right. Absolutely oozes talent. I think when you watch, even in a small sample, when you watch Arch Manning, you can see the refinement. You can see the polish, the fact, the upbringing that he had. Whereas Lagway, it's a little more raw, but there's a ton of raw talent. I think for me, it's the deep ball's great, but you have to make a lot of those underneath throws too. I don't think it's quite as wild as, say, an Anthony Richardson who they had previously at Florida. I think the accuracy and the footwork can still be fixed for Lagway. He's so incredibly young too. I mean, you mentioned it, doing all that as a true freshman, but you're right, as talented as any player in the country, and somebody who could have people thinking the Gators are maybe a hot pick playoff team as we get into those predictions come July and August. But certainly the momentum around that program has changed because they have Lagway, and he's super talented.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one of the highest graded deep throwers in the country. He actually was one of the lowest graded throwers and everything else in short and intermediate range. So there's a lot to fix still with DJ Lagway, but this guy oozes potential. And for the Browns, who haven't had a franchise quarterback in ever, he would be a guy that I think they say, okay, you know what? Let's take this guy and see if we can get a superstar type of quarterback out of him. So DJ Lagway going number 2 overall to the Cleveland Browns. Number 3 overall, Dalton, the New York Giants on the clock here. They also need a quarterback. Are you going to 2026 and 2027 again, or are you sticking to this year?
This time around, it's going to be a quarterback for the Giants. In this year's draft, I'm sure they want a quarterback, but Do they want the quarterback in Cam Ward? Do they want Shedeur Sanders? All of that. This exercise takes the suspense out of it. I think they would take Cam Ward.
Yeah.
Right? I think they want Cam Ward this year. They've tried to talk to Tennessee to trade up to get him. Just isn't happening. And look, he was the highest graded quarterback in college football this past year. There's a reason he's going to be the number 1 pick to Tennessee. He was spectacular at Miami, improved from his days at Incarnate Word, then Washington State. Obviously a little bit of a gunslinger, but I think in this scenario, Cam Ward is the guy that Brian Dable and Joe Schoen feel like they could win with long term, and even don't necessarily have to start him on day one with Russell Wilson there, with Jameis Winston there. If he were to win the job, then cool, but Cam has some time to refine his footwork as well. A little bit of a gunslinger, like I mentioned. There's times late in the play where you see, okay, maybe trying to thread the needle a little bit too much, but Cam's talent level and the way he played this past year at Miami, the Giants want it. They're not going to have an opportunity to get it in the actual draft, but right here behind Manning and Lagway, they have a chance to take Cam Ward, and they would do it.
Absolutely, especially with the owner basically telling Brian Dable and Joe Schoen, hey, we need a franchise quarterback or else your jobs are pretty much gone here in New York. They would probably take the number 1 quarterback in this year's draft in Cam Ward going to the Giants. All right, number 4 overall, the New England Patriots do not need a quarterback because they have Drake May already. So I want to help out him and also the defense by taking the best player in this year's draft, going with Travis Hunter, the wide receiver and cornerback out of Colorado. Now, there might be some people wondering, why not Jeremiah Smith here, who could be a generational wide receiver prospect?
We have our reasons.
We'll get to Jeremiah very quickly.
We had to have a little fun with this.
We did have a little fun. But also, I think, it is realistic that the Patriots and Mike Vrabel looks at it and says, you know what, you can probably get maybe eventually the most valuable non-quarterback in the NFL in Travis Hunter, because if he is a really good receiver and a really good corner, like we think he can be in the NFL, he is going to be one of the most valuable players in the NFL and probably the most valuable non-quarterback in the NFL. He won the Heisman Trophy this past season, had the 3rd best coverage grade in college football, and had the most receiving touchdowns in the Power 4 this past year as well. And like I said, if he continues that two-way stardom in the NFL, he absolutely becomes one of the most valuable non-quarterbacks, and Dawn has him as wide receiver 1 and CB1 in this draft. I have him as CB1 and wide receiver 2 in this draft. He is a blue-chip player in every sense of the word. I still think Travis Hunter is worth a very high pick in this year, all-eligible draft.
I think it's always the thing I go back to with having him number 1 on this year's big board, and even in a scenario like this where we've really never seen a football player like Travis Hunter at this high of a level, right? You see it in high school all the time, this two-way studs, and here and there in college where, even in the past, you think about Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson. I remember even Adoree Jackson played some offense. Miles Jack, right, for UCLA as well, wasn't playing a little running back, but no one's ever done it to the level that Travis has done it, and that would be the appeal, to me at least. I know there's been a lot of talk through this pre-draft process of which side is he playing? Come on now. And I'm optimistic. I'm of the boat where I'm like, why not both? Yep. Maybe he is, and I remember him saying at the Combine, look, I'm different. Start thinking about me a little bit differently. And
always proven it. He is different.
And he keeps proving it. He just keeps proving it. I mean, to get under a coach in Deion Sanders who had an idea back in the day of how that works both ways. And Travis, he talked about he wouldn't return kicks and play special teams because he's already got 2 other jobs, but he's pretty darn good at those 2 jobs. So a rare athlete that I don't know that we've seen before, and I don't know how long it would be before we see someone like this again. And I totally get it. And again, we have our reasons for not going Jeremiah here. We're going to have some fun with this too. But Travis is a rare athlete, and for the Patriots to get him either in the actual draft or even in just this scenario, it would be a home run.
And like I said, if he does play 2 ways and is as good as he was probably not as good as in college, but if he is still a great player at both positions, you are getting one of the most valuable players in the NFL if you do that. So
absolutely,
I think it's almost.
I remember when you were talking about a week or 2 ago about the WAR calculations, and then you sit there and you go, what are the financial aspects of that? Right?
Yeah,
and I know it's like you get down the line, second contract, if he can even do it for a second contract.
If he's playing corner and receiver and playing at a great level, he's worth probably $50 million a year.
It's just these are the fun. It's you've mentioned it for the entirety of that he's been at Colorado. This Shohei Ohtani of college football and maybe of the NFL. Now you do. It feels like you have to take a chance on that level of athletic talent.
Absolutely. All right, number 5 overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock. Does Jeremiah Smith fall stop here, or does it go somewhere else?
Well, it's the moment everybody's been waiting for. The superstar player from Ohio State who we've seen nothing but elite play from during his time in college football. Caleb Downs.
Ooh, okay.
Right. Caleb Downs, I know, shocker. It would be fun to have Jeremiah, obviously, with Brian Thomas Jr., but I think about need a little bit here, too, in this draft. And again, we have our reasons. We're having fun here. But the Jaguars did have the lowest graded safety unit in the NFL last year, and they lost the best player from that unit, Andre Sisco. Now, I think, look, this year we have Malachi Starks in this year's draft. I think he's a very, very good prospect, even arguably a top 20 prospect in this class. Caleb Downs, to me, is a generational player. Yep. This is somebody who can just morph into any role a defense needs. And what his first year as a true freshman at Alabama, one of the best true freshman years we've ever seen from a safety. And then his second year at Ohio State, the best player as a true sophomore on a loaded team, as loaded a defense as we've seen over the last decade. And he was their best player, and he was really the key he was the guy that made their defense go, right? If he was playing in the hole as the Tampa guy, Tampa 2, deep half, down in the box, he's a great tackler. He's one of the elite cover guys. I mean, you don't often get players. I mean, we think about the Kyle Hamiltons and guys and Derwin James and guys of that nature who can just do everything at this position. Caleb Downs can do everything, right? So, I thought the two guys I really still thought about for this pick for Jacksonville were Caleb Downs and Mason Graham. And I've been making the Mason Graham pick so much in the actual 2025 mock drafts, and I do believe that's the most likely player that's going to be there. But I look at Caleb Downs in the way that he could just change their secondary, their entire defense, and I think that's what he's going to be. You could argue in next year's class that he is the best football player, that he could be the number one player on the big board. On top of, look, we saw him house a punt return against Indiana, and he could play special teams for you. There was rumors that he might have been Ohio State's third-string running back, and who knows if he would get two-way reps there and try to go the two-way route a little bit like Travis Hunter did. But either way, as a safety, I think this would be the best safety prospect that we've seen since Kyle Hamilton. Yep. Just an incredibly high IQ football player at such a young age, and I think he will change in NFL defense, and he would massively change the Jaguars defense that struggled so badly at safety last year.
He might even surpass Kyle Hamilton as a prospect, honestly. That's how good this guy is, honestly. I think so many people, like you said before, so many people consider Malachi Starks in that level. Caleb Downs is actually on that kind of generational type of level. And, if you have him as a number one overall player on your big board for next year's draft, I completely understand, because I think he is the best football player as of right now in next year's draft. It's kind of a draft next year in 2026. It kind of lacks top-end blue-chip talent. Caleb Downs is one of the top-end blue-chip players in 2026 as well. So I love that pick for Jacksonville. All right, his teammate here finally stops the slide here at number 6 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. The best active player in college football, Jeremiah Smith, goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, why do we love this pick for Las Vegas? Not only because he's a potential generational talent at wide receiver, but Jeremiah Smith's cousin is Geno Smith, who is the new quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders, and the new offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders is Chip Kelly, who was Jeremiah Smith's offensive coordinator during his true freshman season at Ohio State, where they won a national championship. So there are a couple ties to the Las Vegas Raiders there for Jeremiah Smith, but this is way more than a nepotism pick here for Las Vegas. This guy is freaking special. He is the highest rated wide receiver recruit ever in the recruiting database era, and he was the most valuable receiver in the country as just a true freshman, according to PFF's wins above average metric. He had 15 receiving touchdowns, as tied with Travis Hunter for the most in the Power 4. He had over 1,300 receiving yards, second only to Tedero McMillan in the Power 4 as well. He's an athletic freak at 6'3", 215 pounds, incredibly refined skill set for someone who just turned 19 years old as well. All the makings of a generational type of talent. He's already drawn comparisons to Hall of Famers like Julio Jones and Andre Johnson and all those kind of guys. He is a special, special wide receiver. Still has 2 more years of college football already, and he's already the best player in college football. So for a Raiders team that needs an alpha number 1 type of receiver, Jeremiah Smith fits that. And also, added bonus, he is the cousin of their brand new franchise quarterback and Geno Smith, and he gets to reunite with Chip Kelly as well.
We did rig it up a little bit just to get him to the Raiders here, but no, in this class, there's a chance even he would go as high as number 2 overall.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about Cam Ward maybe being the first pick, if Jeremiah Smith in a vacuum was in this class, he may go number 2 to the Browns.
Yeah.
That's how good he is. When we get to 2027, we're going to talk about Jeremiah Smith the way that, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, A.J. Green on that level. He's a game changer. And for the Raiders, not just for Geno and Chip Kelly, and as fun as that would be, and Geno is as good a vertical passer as he is, second in big-time throws over the last 3 years behind Josh Allen. getting to throw to a downfield threat like his cousin Jeremiah, I mean, it's perfect. And Chip obviously knows how to use him, and Jeremiah knows the offense, but he's unstoppable. It's unbelievable. If you give him a chance one-on-one, he's going to win that battle. So we're going to be talking a ton about Jeremiah Smith. There may even be Heisman hype sometime over the next 2 years, depending on Ohio State's quarterback situation. But this is you talk about generational. This is generational. Getting Jeremiah, and whoever gets him at the NFL level is getting an absolute game changer.
Absolutely. Jeremiah Smith going number 6 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. Dalton, your Jets here at number 7 overall. Who are you taking here?
This was tough. This was actually really tough. And it's kind of the same spot I'm in with the Jets with the actual 7th pick of the draft. I'm not entirely sure which way this is going, but this is a player I really like for them. I want to get somebody on the inside with Quinnen Williams. Look, their pass defense, I think, is still obviously got a good base, right? Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson coming back from injury, Will McDonald. There's some pass rush there. You got good linebackers. You've got Sauce Gardner, who's always the foundation of a good secondary, but the run defense took a huge step back last year, and a lot of that was because at defensive tackle, and really the whole D-line and run defense, it just thinned out. They lost a lot of pieces. It didn't work the way it was supposed to. Give me Mason Graham from the Michigan Wolverines. I think him and Quinnen Williams would become one of the most dynamic pairs of defensive tackles in the league, if not the most dynamic pair. Mason Graham led the nation in run defense grade last year, led the nation in overall grade last year, and over the last 2 years has been the best defensive tackle in college football. I'm a huge fan of him. I know he doesn't have the most imposing tools. He's got shorter arms, but his athleticism, his quickness, his ability to play from any alignment, I think Graham would be a great compliment to Quinnen. I think he would massively raise the floor on this offensive line. I think defensive line. I think the run defense would get a whole lot better. And you talk about really setting up Aaron Glenn's defense with the front four they would have. Let's say Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Quinnen Williams, Mason Graham. That's a lot better, especially with that really good pair of linebackers they have behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. Mason Graham, I think, is a top 5 player in this year's draft for their Jets team that can use help at D tackle alongside Quinnen Williams. I love that pick there. All right, number 8 overall, the Carolina Panthers. This would be a dream selection for them in the actual 2025 NFL draft. It won't happen, though.
Maybe a trade up. Maybe if
they trade up.
Maybe
they
get
could
a trade up going.
They could trade up.
I won't say it
absolutely.
won't happen.
They need to trade up to get this guy because he's not falling to number 8 overall. That is Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. The Panthers are really desperate at edge rusher right now. There's a lot of rumors circulating with them and Jalen Walker for that number 8 overall pick. But if Abdul Carter is here, this is who they're taking. He was the most valuable edge in the country this past season. Cardinal wins above average metric, 92.4 pass rush grade, was 2nd in the nation. He'll likely be a top 3 pick next week in the actual NFL draft, but here in this all-eligible mock draft, this is a dream selection for a Carolina defense that desperately needs another superstar pass rusher after trading away Brian Burns. They get one here in Abdul Carter, and honestly, he was that good last year. That was his first year playing edge rusher. There could be even more of a ceiling he could tap into once he gets into the NFL as well. So I think Carolina will be very, very happy getting Abdul Carter here, even in an all-eligible mock draft, getting him here at number 8 overall.
They've gotten some nice starting caliber pieces in free agency, especially on their defensive line, but what they need is a game changer. They're missing a game-changing pass rusher. That's what Abdul Carter can be. The Micah Parsons comparisons are well warranted, not just because of Penn State, not just because of wearing number 11, not just because of converting from linebacker to edge. He's as talented, I think, as Micah Parsons is, and within 2 or 3 years, he could have that level of impact, maybe even sooner. He would change the entire outlook of this Panthers defense that was the lowest graded unit in football last year. I think, obviously, this year, if they were to find a way to do it, it would be a home run, but right here to get him naturally at number 8 would be a slam dunk for them. The Panthers need this type of pass rusher.
Absolutely. The Parlay Channel is asking, why can't we just do a regular mock draft like everyone else? Dude, we've done like 50 regular mock drafts.
I just did one this morning with Trevor.
Just did one with Trevor this morning on the PF NFL show. So we're trying to get a little creative here.
We're trying to get you ready for the future.
Exactly.
We got 26 to worry about, 2027.
Yeah.
We didn't quite get to 2028 here, but
this is the PFF College Football Show too, man.
Yeah.
Listen, we got we'll do our own mock draft, our final mock draft next week as well, an actual 2025 NFL mock draft. But we always wanted to do an all-eligible one just to kind of get creative.
And for the fans a year from now to look back on this to see just how wrong we were on all of this. That's always the fun part, too.
We've had some dumb ones in the past before.
Sure.
I think is my third year at PFF doing this now, so we've had some dumb picks for sure in this one. But it's always fun to look ahead to 2026 and 2027 and future drafts to see how it compares to this year. All right, number 9 overall. Dalton, you have the New Orleans Saints here, who could need a quarterback with Derek Carr reportedly maybe out for the season with a shoulder injury. So do they go with the quarterback here at number 9?
Yeah, there's some different thoughts here. Before this Derek Carr news, I think I was leaning towards maybe a trench pick, right? Offensive, defensive line, they need help on both sides, but you really look at their uncertain situation. Now, this was likely Derek Carr's last year in New Orleans anyway, just with his contract, I think, and they need to reset their salary cap, although we say that every year and they never really fully do it, so maybe they would hold on to him for another year, but I believe this would have been Carr's last year in New Orleans anyway. They've just never found the long-term successor to Drew Brees, right? So we, in the actual 2025 draft is that Shedeur Sanders, who suddenly New Orleans is the betting favorite to take him, but let's have some fun and connect the dots here, right? Yep. And a guy that's going back to school, eligible for this year, but didn't declare, went back to low moving costs, LSU for another year. Let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier. Mm-hmm. And not only is it low moving costs coming from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, only about a 90-minute ride, but Kellen Moore just hired his dad, Doug Nussmeier, as their offensive coordinator. And I have to think that's at least somewhere. I'm not saying it's the only reason they would make a pick, but I have to think that would be somewhere on the mind of, hey, we know him pretty well, obviously, right? And Doug's been coaching for a long time at the college and the NFL level, but it's just something I sit here and think about and go, he's right down the road. His dad's the offensive coordinator. Do we have those thoughts? And Garrett's a darn good player, too. Look, he was 19th in the nation in passing grade this past year, 7th in big-time throws. First year as a full-time starter, he was pretty darn good, right? And he took time to develop for 3 years in LSU, the last couple behind Jaden Daniels, got to play a little bit mop-up duty, started the bowl game against Wisconsin at the end of 2023, right? So I think you're talking about a guy who's polished. He's a little bit of a gunslinger, but he's got a good arm. The one thing with Garrett, he's not all that mobile, so you're not going to get, obviously, the dynamic rushing ability you got out of somebody like Jaden Daniels. Right. He's a pocket quarterback, but if you got a further breakout from him this year, even though it's in his 5th year of college football, we've seen this where quarterbacks are staying longer and longer to get that experience. We talked about with Arch Manning maybe getting that 2nd year of starting experience. Might help Nussmeier a lot here, and he's going to be expected to carry this offense, and you're going to hear first-round buzz on him if he plays well again this year.
Absolutely. I love the connection there with his dad being the offensive coordinator there in New Orleans. Plus, like you said, it is a little moving cost going from Baton Rouge down to New Orleans. All right, so they take a quarterback at number 9 overall. Bears did not need a quarterback, taking Caleb Williams number 1 overall last year, so they go with another offensive weapon in Ashton Jeanty, who they actually might take in this upcoming draft next week. The running back out of Boise State, 99.9 career rushing grade is the best in PFF college history, 81.7 career receiving grade as well. He set the record for rushing grade in the season. He set the record for yards after contact in the season, for broken tackles in the season as well. He is up there, in my opinion, with Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley as the best running back prospects over the last decade or so. Ashton Jeanty's that special of a talent. I think Ben Johnson, they need a running back to kind of complete that offense for him after doing such a great job of rebuilding that offensive line. Ashton Jeanty, I think, is a very, very likely selection if he is on the board at number 10 overall next week. And I think even in an all-eligible mock draft, Ben Johnson still probably wants to get that kind of guy here, number 10.
I do like that you stuck with this, right? Because I think, to me, it would have been it's very tempting here to go defensive line, especially with everybody eligible. We talk about maybe a Dylan Stewart or a Colin Simmons. Maybe the Bears getting one more pass rusher. Or if there was another D tackle, I don't know about maybe a Peter Woods from Clemson might be an option. But I'm with you. Jeanty's special, and even in this year, a stacked running back class where there's going to be good players probably all the way through the 5th round at least. Jeanty's the best one, and he's one of the best ones that we've seen over his 3 years in college as a runner and receiver. 325 broken tackles. It's just, the numbers are ridiculous, and I know a lot of it was in the Mountain West, but he did it against Oregon. He did it against Washington, the national runner-up. He did it against UCF and UCLA and Oregon State and all these Power 5 teams. I don't have any doubts about Jeanty, and I think he'd be a perfect fit for Ben Johnson and the Bears.
Love it. All right, number 11 overall, the San Francisco 49ers. Who do they go with here?
Well, there seems to be, for the 49ers, an obvious need on both sides in the trenches, right? I could go offensive line here, could go defensive line here. Trevor, in our mock draft this morning on the NFL show, traded up to the 3rd overall pick to get Abdul Carter.
Ooh.
I mean, feeling like, okay, we need somebody alongside Nick Bosa so he's not just getting doubled and tripled every single pass rush rep, right? And we didn't do trades here. Could you imagine trades in an
it'd be impossible.
We'd be sitting here all day. But no, I'm gonna go to the 2027 class. A guy coming off of his true freshman year. Let's go to South Carolina and take Dylan Stewart.
Love it.
To pair a classically built defensive end who's an absolute freak of nature. You saw it in that very first game against Old Dominion. I know it's Old Dominion, but this is a true freshman in his first game. 6 pressures, 3 sacks, 94.6 pass rush grade in his college debut. And we're like, okay, all right, this kid's a whole different animal. And then he follows it up the rest of the season. Tied for 6th in the nation with Mike Green in pass rush grade this year as a true freshman. Tearing up the SEC. He's an absolute nightmare to block. Teams playing South Carolina are going to have to double team him every single snap next year. This is another guy you talk about generational, and I know it's used a little too much, especially with edge rushers when you have so many freak athletes nowadays, but when that 2027 draft hits, I would expect right now that Dylan Stewart's going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about to do this in the SEC as a true freshman. And I know South Carolina's defense was loaded this year, and you see all the guys that are going to get drafted. Dylan Stewart might be he's probably the most talented player out of all of them, and he would be a perfect fit in Robert Saleh's defense with Nick Bosa.
He's got to get a little stronger as a run defender, but he is already the best pass rusher in college football this year. He's probably the most feared pass rusher in college football, too. I mean, the moves this guy has in his arsenal already, while still being a freak athlete as well. Great body for a defensive end, too. I love Dylan Stewart, man, and I think he is already the best pass rusher in the nation. And he is just like I said, getting a little stronger in the run game, but like I said before, he is going to be probably a top 5 pick in 2027. That's how good of a player he is. And South Carolina has not had a freaky edge talent like that since Jadeveon Clowney, honestly. And like Clowney, he has the upside of becoming a number 1 overall pick, top 5 pick when it's all said and done in 2027. Even though it's a loaded draft in 2027, as we've seen so far, he's still going to be a blue chip talent in that year's draft. All right, number 12 overall, Dallas Cowboys up here in a selection that could actually happen in the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm going to go with Tedero McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. I think he's a perfect complement to CeeDee Lamb. Led the FBS with 35 contested catches over the last 2 years, and he was second in the nation with 29 broken tackles after the catch this past season, only trailing Luther Burden III, who is known for being a yards after the catch receiver. Ted's not known for that, and yet he was still only behind Burden in broken tackles after the catch. Again, another one that could be very likely in the draft, like Genty going to the Bears. I think Ted McMillan to the Cowboys would fix a big need as a number 2 option opposite of CeeDee Lamb.
You're certainly appealing to the fans right there with that pick because from what I just saw this morning on the mock draft simulator, 54% of users are taking a wide receiver to the Cowboys this year, 12th overall. They feel like they need another weapon for CeeDee Lamb. Now, me personally, I would think about improving the run defense, maybe D-line, maybe linebacker. But look, if they were to take Ted, I think it'd be a fantastic compliment to CeeDee. Like you mentioned, the best vertical receiver in college football over the past 2 years, 6'5", the acrobatics in the air, the ball skills. I think the comparisons to Drake London are about as fair as it gets right there. And Drake London was an 8th overall pick. And look, he just had the 6th best receiving grade in the NFL. Yep. In his 3rd year in the league, and he's finished 10th, 25th, and 6th in receiving grade. I mean, if McMillan came out and was as good as Drake London, the Cowboys get a steal right there. It's a great pick, and their offense operates at its best when they have that complement to CeeDee Lamb and allow Lamb to work underneath and everything that he can do, but you need one more guy. In the same way that the Bengals have T. Higgins to complement Jamar Chase, McMillan could do that for CeeDee.
Absolutely. Live asking, are we live right now? This is live. We're live right now. If anyone has any takes on any of these guys for this year, next year, or the year after, let us know in the comments below. But yes, we are absolutely live right now, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat as of right now too. And people, again, asking, why are we drafting 2027 guys? We're doing an eligible mock draft, guys. We're doing a mock draft if everyone is eligible for next year's guys, this year's guys, 2027 guys, kind of give you guys a sense of where the 2026 draft and where the 2027 draft stand right now, how they compare to this year's draft.
Do you think the league will ever change the rule?
No.
And go to the
I don't think so.
At least go to the basketball way of one year, and like if you would allow Jeremiah to have come out this year. Do you think they would ever think about it?
I think it's how physical of a sport it is. I think for player safety reasons, it's probably be really difficult to do that.
It's reasonable.
Can you imagine like 18-year-olds kind of go out there taking hits from Roquan Smith or something like that?
And look, and you have to wonder about player decisions too, because it's as we've seen lately at Tennessee, most recently, NIL and the lack of structure and the rules of college football and with the amount of money that's going into it, it's only making it harder to handle.
Yep.
You wonder, let's just say Nico Iamaleava, if he was allowed to come out this year because he's not eligible till next year, would he have just declared for the NFL draft?
Yeah.
Would he be QB3, QB4? What would he have been in this year's draft? Maybe we get him here, maybe not. We don't even know what school he's playing at next year, but it's an interesting question if they would ever shorten that time frame and go the basketball route of one and done. And then you wonder about one and done college football teams, which feels ridiculous.
That would be insane.
It would be ridiculous. But no, it's always, again, it's fun to do an exercise like this to just go, what if they were? What if we could? What if we could do that? And it would be, obviously, we're having a lot of fun with it through 12 picks so far, aren't we?
Absolutely. All right, you have number 13 overall with Miami Dolphins. What are you doing here?
Okay. To me, the obvious need for the Dolphins is offensive line.
Yep.
And I think, and there's been a lot of debate, even when we've taken Kelvin Banks to them or this, it's, we have Patrick Paul. I know you have Patrick Paul. I'm aware. I know what the Dolphins lineup looks like, right? But they need more talent one way or the other on this offensive line. If it's at tackle, if it's at that left guard spot, right? I know D-line and secondary are also needs, but you know what? I'm going to take the guy I believe, no matter where he's playing, I think is the best offensive lineman in this year's class. I'll take Will Campbell.
Okay.
And if that means he's playing tackle for Miami, cool. If that means Patrick Paul's playing tackle and Will Campbell goes inside to left guard, I have no issue with that. They need to raise the floor of this offensive line, especially in pass protection, because nothing else for the Dolphins matters. Not the secondary, not the run defense, not Tyreek Hill, not anything else. None of it matters if Tua's not protected and he's not healthy and he can't play 17 games, which he's only done once. You take Will Campbell, you take the top-rated offensive lineman in this class, you put him at tackle, you put him at guard, whatever. Put the best five out there, get Tua protected, and move them from there. So you can use all those great weapons and all those fast running backs and everything, and you can work the rest of the draft on the defense. There's a ton of run defenders in this class. I know now all of a sudden I'm talking like it's 2025, but you can find corners, you can find safeties, you can find D tackles. None of it matters if you don't protect Tua. Give me the best offensive lineman in the 2025 class, Will Campbell.
I like it. Donnie in the chat's already saying, what about Spencer Fano? I like Spencer Fano too, and he's not, maybe we'll get to him later on in this draft, but he's a guy that I think is only a guard in the NFL. If you take Will Campbell here, he has the versatility that he could play left tackle for you if Patrick Paul's not working out, or he could play left guard for you with Liam Eichenberg looking like one of the worst guards in football.
I will say, as far as the run scheme and Mike McDaniel and the outside zone and all, Fano would fit in terrific in the run scheme. Absolutely. I do worry about him a bit in pass protection. I think he's not so refined as a pass protector, but you're talking about a fit, and this is something we might talk about next year with Spencer Fano. In one of these Shanahan schemes and that heavy outside zone scheme, Fano would be fantastic. He's an absolute mauler, and he can really move. He's just got to refine everything in pass protection right now.
The highest graded offensive tackle in the country this past season. Utah's right tackle is only a true sophomore. But like I said before, I think he's probably more of a guard in the NFL, but still could be an elite guard prospect too that we have in 2026. Number 14 overall, going with another 2025 prospect. This would be a dream selection here for the Indianapolis Colts. If it happened, Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. He led all Power 4 tight ends this past year in basically every stat you could think of. Overall grade, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, yards after the catch as well. And last year, the Colts had the second fewest receiving yards by tight end. So I think in the actual draft, they're going to take Tyler Warren if he's actually here at number 14 overall. Maybe Colston Loveland if he's here at number 14 overall as well. If they don't take a tight end here, you got to imagine they take one on day 2 with maybe Elijah Arroyo or something else like that on day 2. They really need to get a tight end in this year's draft and what is a very good tight end class and surround Anthony Richardson with as much talent as possible, or Daniel Jones with as much talent as possible to figure out whether or not Anthony Richardson in his third year can actually be their franchise quarterback, or if they got to look into the 2026 NFL draft and get a quarterback there, maybe get the next Manning. After Peyton Manning, get Arch Manning in there in Indianapolis. Who knows? But they need to figure out if Anthony Richardson's the guy or not, and by doing so, you get him another weapon, another top-flight weapon like Tyler Warren to them. This is probably a selection that they would dream about for the draft.
Absolutely, and I think the debate is interesting when it comes to if Tyler Warren's there. You're right. If he's there, if he got to 14, it's a wrap. draft him. Just draft him, right? The debate with him and Colston Loveland is interesting because they're both extremely good players. Two different styles, though. And it's that last number that you mentioned with Warren, that yards after catch and what he can do with the ball in his hands, right? What is it? Wearing number 44 because his dad wanted him to run the ball like John Riggins, right? And you think about what he can do after the catch, and you think about what a guy like George Kittle does after the catch, right? With the ball in his hands. That's where the appeal is to me, because the Colts, they run a lot of RPO. They want to throw the ball underneath. They use the tight end, and Shane Steichen used to do it with Dallas Goedert in Philadelphia too. They use the tight end in those RPO looks. Warren actually fits that blueprint a little bit better, I think, than Colston Loveland does, who's more of a classic route runner who can line up anywhere and dice you up on the outside. Warren would be a better fit in the offense. They may still take Loveland and just say, you know what, this guy's talented enough, he can do it anyway. But Warren's the ideal guy for them to have. To get him here at 14 would be a slam dunk. If they ever somehow got him at 14 in the actual 2025 draft, boy, what an offense they're cooking up. I mean, they've got all the receivers. They've got Jonathan Taylor, good offensive line, figuring out the quarterback competition, because it sounds like there's going to be a real competition between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, but you're making those guys' life even easier when you get that guy like Tyler Warren in there.
Absolutely. We got a couple questions in the chat right now I want to get to. One of them is Lav S asking, where do we think Nico Iamaleava goes? I think there's been rumors so far he's in contact with UCLA. As of right now, it seems like a lot of schools are saying no to Nico right now.
Well, the problem when it's a quarterback, right, is, and it's already now we're beyond spring practice, is you're so locked in on either your starter, your guy, right? Yep. Let's say USC, that's another team that's been rumored. But Jaden Maiava's already been in the program for a year. He's already gone through all of spring ball. He's been pretty much declared the starter. At quarterback, it's different. If he was a defensive end, you go, yeah, just add him to the group, right? It doesn't work like that with quarterbacks, especially when you're talking about paying potentially $4 or $5 million or whatever his price tag might be. You only get one starter. And then you take the gamble of maybe you're upending kind of the flow and the rhythm and the camaraderie of your team, going, okay, we're bringing this guy in. So I almost have to wonder, UCLA might be a good call. If it's a team that is really coming out of spring practice searching for a quarterback, right? Could that be at Ohio State? What does Oregon think of Dante Moore? But if you're a team with an established starter, or at least a guy that you think is close to an established starter through spring practice, it's going to be a hard sell to your locker room to bring a guy in, not just Nico, but any guy in as a guy, we think he's going to start on 3 months' notice. There's a lot more that goes into that behind the scenes. So I do think it's a tougher situation to figure out where he's going than we think. And it might not be one of the primetime spots. I know Bill Belichick in North Carolina has been floated out there as a possibility, because we don't really know what their quarterback situation looks like. But it's tough to read right now. And the only thing we do know is if he's trying to play this year, he just can't play in the SEC.
Yeah, he can't play in the SEC. UCLA, North Carolina, Tulane. Those are the three schools that have been rumored for Nico Iamaleava as of right now, which is kind of ironic.
Bill Belichick got him in year one with that whole story. Leading off week one with a Monday nighter against TCU.
Yeah.
You imagine Nico and Bill Belichick.
I can see fun. North Carolina. I can see UCLA, considering he's from Long Beach, California, as well. Go back home to UCLA, stay in a power conference. Tulane would be ironic, considering he probably entered the portal partly because of Darian Mensah getting $4 million a year, and Nico was making about $2.5 million a year at Tennessee. So he's probably thinking, hey, Darian Mensah's getting $4 million a year. I should be getting $4 million a year. Mensah going from Tulane over to Duke. So it would be pretty ironic if he goes to Tulane to replace Darian Mensah. But I think UCLA and North Carolina, those are probably two most likely landing spots for him right now. The other question I want to get to is Donnie, who's asking, any 2026 tight ends or 2027 tight ends next year? I don't think so as of right now. I think Eli Stowers, my number one tight end in college football, I don't think he'd be going over Tyler Warner, Colston Loveland in a mock draft. Jack Endries from California is a really good player too. Actually just entered the transfer portal. Max Clare from Ohio, now at Ohio State, from Purdue, good player too. But I think it's pretty obvious that in an all-eligible mock draft, it would still be Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland top.
Yeah, and I think you're always, with tight ends, you're looking for those breakout guys, right? We already knew going into this year that Colston Loveland was awesome, right, from his first 2 years at Michigan. But Tyler Warren, in the year he had, that really came out of nowhere, because he was underutilized at Penn State, prior to 2024. And now Andy Kotelnicki went in there as their offensive coordinator and just said, wait, you have this guy and you're not using him as much as you should? I'm just going to tee off on everybody in the Big Ten with him. So you never know when that breakout is coming. But right this minute, I'm with you. I wouldn't say that we know that there's a first-round tight end next year necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely not. I think Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are pretty clearly, even in all-eligible mock draft, they would still be tight end 1 and tight end 2 in that all-eligible mock draft. All right, let's get back to the mock draft right now, Dalton. Number 15 overall, the Atlanta Falcons. Who are they going with?
All right, you want to look ahead to 2027
Let's do
again?
it.
You want to talk about somebody who just finished a fantastic true freshman season? So, if Dylan Stewart, if we believe Dylan Stewart's the best four-down classic defensive end in college football, I'm going to talk now about a guy who might be the best stand-up two-point outside linebacker edge rusher in college football, Colin Simmons from Texas. And look, all this defensive talent that Texas has gotten drafted the last couple of years, there's more coming, and Colin Simmons is right at the front of that. A 90 pass rush grade as a true freshman, tied for the team lead in sacks, despite being fifth on the team in pass rush reps. He was really kind of rotating in there as that second wave of pass rusher, but he's an absolute freak of nature. The burst off of the ball, basically everything that we say about James Pierce Jr. over the last couple of years, Colin Simmons did that as a true freshman, and he wasn't even utilized maybe even as much as he could have been with some other guys in there, right? Barron Sorrell and Trey Moore and some other veteran guys Texas tries to work in there. But Colin Simmons as the premier stand-up edge rusher in the Atlanta Falcons defense and Raheem Morris's defense that loves those type of guys, perfect. Perfect. For all the same reasons I talk about Mike Green or James Pierce Jr. being a fit for the Falcons, that's Colin Simmons, and he's just as good at an even younger age. He's going to have a freaky couple of seasons down there at Texas over the next 2 years.
I have him edge one in college football as of right now over Dylan Stewart because I do think he's a little bit better run defender than Dylan Stewart. Now, Dylan Stewart might have a higher ceiling than Colin Simmons because of the physical tools and how good he was as a pass rusher, but I think Colin Simmons is very close to being as good of a pass rusher, and he was a much better run defender than Dylan Stewart. So as of right now, I have Colin Simmons, as edge one in college football. But yeah, man, he is a phenomenal talent, and the bend that this kid has is crazy too. There's been some comps out there, Dalton, to Von Miller for Colin Simmons, and that is a Hall of Fame player, right? That is one of the best edge rushers we've seen in NFL history. But at the same time, you watch Colin Simmons, he goes, you know what? Kind of saw a lot of that from Von Miller, Texas A&M, back when he was playing back there too. So Colin Simmons, who was an excellent player in high school football at Texas, dominated high school football in the highest classification of high school football. He had like 23 sacks in his junior year, I believe. I think Duncanville is what the high school he went to. But at Texas this past year, man, he was phenomenal. And I already consider him to be the best edge rusher in college football. So yeah, Colin Simmons and Dylan Stewart, two guys who should be very, very high selections in the actual 2027 NFL draft. Donnie's Arizona Cardinals here at number 16 overall. He told me do not mess this one up. Hopefully he likes this pick. I'm going with Will Johnson here, the cornerback out of Michigan in this year's draft. Only one of Arizona's corners last year was in the top 75 of PFF graded. And that was Garrett Williams, Syracuse legend, but he plays nickel corner for Arizona. So they still have pretty big needs on the outside in their secondary. Johnson fits that very well. He's a very high IQ player, plays very well in off coverage and in zone coverage, which is what Arizona does a lot in their defense. He has a 91.3 grade across his 3 years at Michigan. I know there are some speed concerns with Will Johnson. Probably runs in the 4.5 range if he was to run a 40-yard dash, which he's not doing before the draft. But even with that, in this kind of defense where you're playing a lot of off-zone coverage where his IQ and instincts can really shine, Will Johnson would be a phenomenal pick, I think, for the Arizona Cardinals.
This was one that we argued about more than maybe any other pick in this first round because I'm a huge fan of Texas corner Jahdae Barron going to this defense for that same reason and how good he is in zone coverage. But realistically, it's not a wrong answer, right? Either one of them could be CB2 or 3 in this year's class. They're both fantastic football players. As long as Will Johnson's healthy, I'm with you. You could argue he's a top 10 talent in this draft, right? So either one works. We probably argued about it for way too long because it's just every time I've been doing mock drafts lately, I have Jahdae Barron going to Arizona. I just like the fit, but Johnson's a great pick too, and you mentioned it. Good at safety, good in the slot with Garrett Williams. Find that primetime guy on the outside, and now you're putting together a really complete defense for Jonathan Gannon. All
right, we'll get to Eli's Bengals in just a second. Before we do that, we talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kid's investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a kid's investment account allows them to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Just meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clear Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right. Number 17 overall, the Cincinnati Bengals here. Dalton, who are they taking at number 17?
I hope we got this right because we didn't really consult producer Eli on this pick like we usually do, but I don't know if he would have wanted to hear from us on a weekend. Either way, they need help on the defensive line. Had some choice, maybe an edge rusher, maybe defensive tackle from this year. I'm actually going to look ahead to next year. Let's look at this great Clemson Tiger defense they're going to have this coming year that could get them in even further in the college football playoff than they had last year. Let's talk about Peter Woods, the big defensive tackle, big run stopper who, as a true freshman and true sophomore, you would never know it watching him play. This guy, even as a true freshman, looks stronger than a lot of senior defensive tackles that we watch. His strength is otherworldly. His ability in run defense to plug it up between the tackles is unbelievable. 89.7 run defense grade through his true freshman and true sophomore seasons. Just a ridiculously high floor player, I think. Still working on the pass rush skills. Obviously, I think maybe even a similar profile to, say, a Walter Nolan or somebody like that. But Woods has been just off the charts so far for Clemson through his first 2 years, and he's going to be the anchor of that run defense as he continues to develop his pass rush skills. I think when you talk about the Bengals needing a player to be that anchor, to stop the run, to get off the field on defense, Peter Woods could be that guy for them. I'm a big fan of him.
I'm a huge fan of him as well. He actually played a little edge rusher for Clemson this past year as well. Was actually effective as a 320-pound edge rusher. He shouldn't be playing on the edge for Clemson, but they put him there for a few games. Went back to D tackle and was dominant as a D tackle as well. I'm with you, man. I think he's right now pretty easily DT1 in next year's draft, and could be a top 10 pick when it's all said and done in next year's draft.
Might be playing alongside Edge one in next year's draft.
That
Clemson, we'll tell you what, throughout the summer, we're going to talk a lot about this Clemson defense because they've got superstars all over the place. It's about to be ridiculous down there.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So let's get to number 18 overall, the Seattle Seahawks. They're going with another guy in this year's draft. That is Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle from Texas, my number one offensive lineman in this year's draft. And listen, Seattle has to really address their interior offensive line. Right now, they're two projected starting guards. Neither of them were among the 70 highest graded players at guard last year. Banks was the Power Four's most valuable tackle last year, and I think he has the versatility to play guard. Plus, you can play Banks at guard right now, and if Abraham Lucas's injury issues continue, you could put him out at right tackle too, opposite of Charles Cross too. So it's kind of a player who could play both guard and tackle for Seattle if they need it with Abraham Lucas. So another guy like Will Campbell, Dalton, kind of like the Miami situation, just get a good offensive lineman. You can play him anywhere, get your best five out there. Because I think there is a chance that in the next couple of years or so, if Abraham Lucas's injuries continue like they have been, they might need a tackle too.
Everything you just said, plus the fact that Banks would be a perfect fit in Clint Kubiak's scheme.
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The outside zone run game, they ran it so much at Texas, and Banks was so good at it, especially this past year. He got so much more consistent in run blocking this past year. He's a proven pass protector. Like you mentioned, just get talented guys in there. The interior pass protection is the biggest reason they missed the playoffs last year. If he plays inside, if they find other talented guys inside, if he plays right tackle, wherever, just get a talented guy like this who fits your system in the room and figure it out later, because as they're currently constructed, kind of feel for Sam Darnold a little bit. It's not great on the inside right now. You add Banks, which is a realistic possibility. It could happen this year. We've seen Banks, his draft stock has been kind of all over the place. He's gone sometimes top 12, sometimes closer to the end of the first round. If he's there for Seattle at 18 in the actual draft, they got to think about it.
Absolutely. Donnie's asking why not Spencer Fano there, because he does fit the scheme in outside zone, but you got to protect Sam Darnold.
Yep.
I think Kelvin Banks is a way better pass blocker than Spencer Fano right now. I do love Spencer Fano, I do, But I also love the fact that he can play guard and tackle in that offense, whereas Spencer Fano is probably just a guard for them in that offense, while Banks at least gives you the versatility if worst comes to worst with Abraham Lucas there. Next up, Dalton, number 19 overall, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who are they taking here?
Okay, for as much as I love the annual tradition of waiting every offseason to see when Levante David's going to sign another one-year contract and probably play till he's 50 or however long he's going to play, the Bucs, we got to start thinking about, okay, who's the next captain of the ship here? And just Levante David, look, he's done it for so long. I really think he should get more Hall of Fame consideration down the line, even though he doesn't have a lot of the accolades on paper, but a lot of that, the Bucs weren't great in his early years and all of that. Either way, and I think this is somebody that they should really think about. If he were to fall to them, I don't think right now that he would, but maybe at 19, or maybe they trade up Jahad Campbell from Alabama. Let's pair him with Levante David for this year. They've been kind of missing. It didn't go so well as long as they thought it would with Devin White, right? They've been trying to find answers next to Levante David the last 2 years. Didn't go so well this year, especially with their middle of the field coverage. I think Jahad Campbell would solve a lot of their problems. Play him next to David for a year or however long David wants to keep playing, then make Campbell the captain of that defense right in the middle of it. One of 6 linebackers in college football last year with an 80-plus grade in run defense and coverage. He, in this 2025 class, is clearly the best linebacker and clearly the guy that I would feel best about being that ace Mike linebacker that you need in the middle of your defense. Let's get him down to Tampa. Let's get a succession plan going for Levante David.
That makes a lot of sense right there. The only thing I will say is that Zach in the chat was saying, I will like and subscribe to the channel if you include Texas linebacker Anthony Hill Jr.
We've had debates about Anthony Hill. You have him as the number 1 linebacker returning. Is that right?
Yeah.
He was one. There was probably 4 or 5 players when we got to the end of this that I felt a little uneasy leaving out, because Anthony Hill was a guy I did even think about there, because that's something we talked about. Yep. Would it still be Jahad Campbell with the year he just came off, or do we think about Anthony Hill? And it was tough because
it's close, yeah.
It's very close, and there's not a ton of teams with a huge need at linebacker. It's another one. There's a couple of teams here later in this first round here that I would have thought of maybe Anthony Hill, but it was tough to try to fit him in. We ended up actually not getting him in, but it's something we talked about a lot. I was like, man, should Anthony Hill be in this first round? It was tight. It was tight.
So please, Zach, still like and subscribe to the channel, even though we didn't get Anthony Hill Jr. in this, but he is very close to Jahad Campbell. In an all-eligible situation, he would be very close to being LB1. He's pretty clearly LB2 for us in this all-eligible mock draft. He is a number 1 returning linebacker, for me at least, in college football going into next year. So check out that article. He's a true playmaker as a coverage defender, run defender, pass rusher. He could do everything for that Texas defense. But we had Jahad Campbell going over him in this all-eligible mock draft. Number 20 overall, the Denver Broncos. There's probably a name, Dalton, that a lot of people have been saying, how is this guy not going off the board yet? Well, he's going right here. That is Ryan Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama, in the 2027 NFL Draft, going to Denver right here. Now, listen, Jeremiah Smith had the greatest true freshman receiver season we've ever seen in college football history. Ryan Williams still had a really damn good year as well. He had 865 receiving yards, second to Smith among all true freshmen this past year, and second among all true freshmen over the last 3 seasons as well. Elite speed, elite body control, and should only be getting better over the next couple seasons at Alabama right now. So Ryan Williams, probably going to be wide receiver 2 in the 2027 NFL Draft, but he is no consolation prize. He is an elite talent. And getting him here to Denver, who could use another weapon in that offense with his deep speed, his body control. Remember that touchdown grab he had against Georgia and all the other grabs he had this season as well. Ryan Williams, I'm really a huge fan of him, and not quite as good as Jeremiah Smith, but then again, nobody is quite as good as Jeremiah Smith. Ryan Williams is still an elite talent.
Boy, how much fun are we going to have with the 2027 receiver class? You got those 2 guys. Cam Coleman from Auburn, possibly, right? Ryan Wingo, another guy from Texas. Yep. Texas keeps finding them. I mean, when we get to this 2027 wide receiver class, we're going to be talking about legendary stuff, I think, with the types of talents that we have. And you mentioned it, Smith and Williams both walking into college football as true freshmen, 2 of the best receivers. You could argue Smith was the best receiver and Williams wasn't far behind him. We're going to watch them tear apart defenses the next 2 years, and they're going to be picked very high in 2027.
Absolutely. Jeremiah is my easily number 1 returning wide receiver in college football, but Ryan Williams, for me, was my number 2 returning receiver in college football. Just true sophomores going into next year. Good news, Dalton, we did get Zach to like and subscribe to the channel even though we didn't get Anthony Hill Jr.
We're going to talk about Anthony Hill and that Texas defense a whole lot this year. It's not just going to be about Arch Manning, really. When you look at Texas may still have the best defense in college football next year. It's entirely possible.
Them or Clemson probably.
I mean, you're talking about even with all the talent that's getting drafted, an absolute boatload of talent coming back. Certainly, Texas is not going to go down quietly, and they're going to try to win a national title again this year. So close, obviously, last year and ran into a buzzsaw in Ohio State, but that defense is going to be nasty.
They have, for me, edge one in college football in Colin Simmons, LB1 in college football in Anthony Hill Jr., Malik Muhammad's a top 10 corner for me. Michael Taft's a top 10 safety for me as well. Yeah, they are loaded.
And they're going to keep finding freak defensive tackles.
Yeah, they will.
I mean, they never run out of those. So, no, you'll hear plenty about Anthony Hill this year. That's for darn sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, so they're going to be a really, really good team next year. Again, even with Arch Manning, our number one overall pick in this eligible mock draft, leading them in offense as well. Another quarterback potentially here, Dalton, number 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you think here?
Yeah, because we're 10 days from the draft, and we have no idea who the Steelers quarterback is.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers isn't signed. They have Mason Rudolph. That's cool. I'm not trying to start him. And we're even talking about scenarios for quarterbacks for them in this actual draft. Is it Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe? No suspense here. I'm going Shedeur Sanders. Get him in there. Over the last 2 years, 91.4 passing grade at Colorado, 1.3% turnover-worthy play rate. He broke Jaden Daniels' Power 5 record, but Jaden Daniels had it for 1 year. That was the number I kept using last year to hype up Jaden Daniels as QB1, best turnover-worthy play rate in Power 5 history. Shedeur Sanders broke that. I get it. You're not getting the elite athlete, the Lamar Jackson level athlete. You're not getting Josh Allen's arm strength. Shedeur Sanders is a quarterback. He's a quarterback's quarterback. That's the best way I can put it. He's a quarterback's quarterback. He's accurate. He doesn't turn the football over. Yes, the pocket presence. I get it. But there also weren't many great pockets there at Colorado, except for one guy we'll talk about a little bit later. But it takes a whole unit, and they didn't run the football at all. So he did everything. When they talk about him getting out of structure, what else was he supposed to do for them to win games? Right? Yeah. They couldn't run the ball. It was all on him. Travis Hunter, LaJohntay Wester, those guys. Obviously, the defense got better as the year went on. But to me, this is just a clean, solid quarterback prospect. I get it. He's not a freak like Caleb Williams or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I understand that. But we only have so many of those guys. And if you just want a good, solid, to me, accurate, high-floor quarterback that can get the ball to DK Metcalf, to George Pickens, that if you protect him can see the field very well, I'll take Shedeur. I think if they ever got a shot to take him 21 in the actual 2025 draft, sprint it in. All right. And in this exercise here where he's, the fifth or sixth quarterback off the board that we have, yeah, it's easy. In part because of need, because we have no idea who's starting for the Steelers right now. And B, look, Shedeur is really good. And it feels like we've spent this entire pre-draft process trying to just swat off the opinions that, Shedeur, people are, Shedeur's bad. Why? Oh, Great. Okay, cool. If you watch him at all the last couple of years, or even obviously going back to Jackson State, but if you watched him at Colorado, him and Travis were the reasons they won football games. And he was an elite quarterback at Colorado. We don't say this enough. He says it. I know he says it all the time.
Yeah.
They were the worst team in the Power 5 before he got there.
Yep, 1-11.
They just went 9-4, and were tied. Actually, they lost out on the Big 12 title game in a tiebreaker. It's not easy to fix a team like that in 2 years, and he was the biggest reason for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Shedeur Sanders. I love how the way you describe him is that he's a quarterback.
The
Steelers, they just need a warm body at this point.
Pretty much, and it's not just like he's. When you look at the way he has to win from the pocket, see the field, read defenses, make accurate throws. That's the best way I can put it. Is like a quarterback's quarterback. I get it. He can't throw the ball 90 yards. He doesn't run a 4.3. I understand that, but neither does Brock Purdy. Neither does Kirk Cousins. Neither does Dak Prescott. These guys are all really good. Right? Yep. You don't have to be Josh Allen to be a successful quarterback.
Yep.
It's just not. I get the freak traits, but you don't always have to look for freak traits when you're just looking for good players.
Absolutely. Yeah, Steelers taking him at number 21 overall. That is a selection I am hoping for as a Steelers fan on draft night, because I think that would be the perfect pick for them at number 21. Let's go to the Chargers at number 22 overall. And I didn't preface the draft by saying this, but I'll do it right here because I think this will kind of surprise a little bit of some people. This is a draft of what we would do, because obviously we have no intel on how any teams feel about the 2026 or even 2027 NFL draft. I am going to go with James Pierce Jr. here to the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, James Pierce Jr. is falling down the board, it seems like, for most people. Now he's seen as maybe a late first round, maybe even early second round pick in the draft. I still have James Pierce Jr. as a top 10 to 15 talent in this year's draft, and you released Joey Bosa already. Khalil Mack's only on a 1-year deal, and he's 34 years old. Los Angeles, they have other needs too, like tight end and even D tackle as well that I could have gone with here, but they might need edge rusher as well pretty soon, and probably could need it right now as well. I think James Pierce Jr., like I said before, is a top 10 to 15 player in the draft. He's higher than any D tackle or tight end that I have available as well here. Over the last 2 seasons, he has over a 22% pressure rate, led all FBS edge defenders with that, became a lot better as a run defender this past year as well. I would take James Pierce Jr. in the top 10 to 15 of the draft. He's not going to go that high, I don't think, anymore. He's going to go late first round now or early second round. But in a what we would do mock draft here, I would take James Pierce Jr. here to the Los Angeles Chargers.
I get it. I totally get it. I think edge is totally on the board for them when you talk about Khalil Mack's going 1 year at a time and Tuli Tuipulotu, very, very good run defender. I don't know, he gave him as much as a pass rusher this past year. Even if Pierce came in as a compliment for Tuli, I think it'd be a really good pick. And I think something that is realistic, whether it's James Pierce Jr., whether it's Mike Green, maybe Jim Harbaugh thinks about replacing Poona Ford on the inside after he left to go to the Rams. But I think this defensive line is a story for the Chargers. They didn't do a ton other than bringing back Taylor Tart in free agency. I think Pierce would be a good pick for them.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the next pick, Dalton. Is number 23 overall, the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, 23, man. If they were picking earlier in this draft, I might have got in on one of these wide receivers for the first time. And what is it, 23 years? Is that right? 2002?
2002, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but either way, we got needs off the edge. We got needs at corner. We got options here. And I think one of the things that sticks out for me, for as much as we talked about how aggressively Jeff Hafley ran his defense at Boston College with all the man coverage, went to a bit more zone coverage this past year. Now, in part because they were really thin at corner and he didn't have a group that he wanted to man up with. But let's just say that trend continues. We talked about Jahdae Barron before, maybe for the Cardinals for these same reasons. I'll take Jahdae Barron to the Green Bay Packers. I think if he got here realistically, I think he'll go before this. Never know what happens on draft night. But if Jahdae Barron got to Green Bay, I think he'd be a great fit. We don't know what's happening with Jair Alexander and his contract situation or a potential trade. Either way, whether Alexander's there or not, I would still take Barron. I think he'd be a perfect fit the way this defense was going and was schemed up last year. Highest zone coverage grade in college football last season among all cornerbacks at 91.5. I think he'd be a perfect fit. I think he would really raise the floor on what's going on in that cornerback room right now. They've got needs at key spots, but Barron would be one of the top guys, one of the top targets for me for Green Bay.
Absolutely. A corner is definitely a need for Green Bay right now, and with Jair Alexander, his future is uncertain in Green Bay as of right now. Jahdae Barron would be a great pick, especially for that Jeff Hafley defense that ran a lot more zone coverage than he did at Boston College when he was a very, very heavy man coverage coach down there. Ran a lot more zone this year, and that would fit Jahdae Barron very well if he went to Green Bay. Number 24 overall, Minnesota Vikings also going with a cornerback here and going with who I think is the best returning cornerback in college football for the 2027 NFL Draft too, Leonard Moore out of Notre Dame. And I kind of love this, Dalton, because Brian Flores is a guy who loves to get very aggressive in his defense with a lot of blitzes, a lot of man coverage. Now, he ran a lot of zone coverage last year. I think that was because he did not have the horses in his secondary to run a lot of man coverage. If you get Leonard Moore with Brian Flores, all of a sudden you give him your number one corner who is an excellent man coverage corner as well. As just a true freshman, Leonard Moore, who was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, was the 3rd most valuable corner in the nation according to PFF's wins above average metric. Only Jahdae Barron and Travis Hunter were more valuable than Leonard Moore this past season. In Notre Dame's heavy man coverage scheme, he had an 82.5 grade in man coverage. Again, 3rd among all corners in the nation. Already the number 1 corner in the country entering his true sophomore season. I think Leonard Moore has all the makings of being another special type of prospect in the 2027 NFL Draft.
I'm glad you brought up the valuable part of what he brought to their team, because you have to remember when Benjamin Morrison got hurt and he was out with a hip injury early in the season, we said, well, that's a big void to fill. Yep. And Leonard Moore just went in there as a true freshman and was as lights out as Morrison generally is, right? And he was all the way through the college football playoff. And you consider, again, you mentioned it, the way they run their defense, as much cover one, as much man coverage as they ran. it felt like he just could do no wrong out there. I mean, it was incredible to see him, even in playoff games, locking down big-time wide receivers in big games. I mean, Moore, yeah, you have to look. He's another one, 2027 class. You have to look at this being like an elite top 10 to 15 player in that class, even though cornerbacks don't always go that high. This is a special football player who was as valuable as any player on that Notre Dame team when they made that run in the national championship.
So I actually looked it up. There's been 8 or 9 times in PFF history we've been ranking the top returning players at every position in college football since 2020 for the last 5 or 6 years. There's 8 times total where a true sophomore has led that ranking. I've had 3 this year that have led the ranking. That's how special the true freshman class was, because Jeremiah Smith, Colin Simmons, and Leonard Moore are all the top returning players for me, at least. They're all true sophomores as well. And you could I don't know if there's anyone else I would throw in here. I would say Leonard Moore had the best true freshman season at a corner we've seen since Derek Stingley Jr. in 2019, probably.
Stingley, yeah. Will Johnson was great his true freshman year as well. He graded out. Even Ben Morrison, too. Both of them were, I believe, in the top, I want to say, 7 or 8 of coverage grade by true freshmen. Stingley, obviously, a great freshman year. But Will Johnson and Ben Morrison jump out to me there recently, too. But Leonard Moore, and again, you consider in that defense, in such, again, on a hard-nosed defensive football team that runs that much man coverage, for him to just step in for Benjamin Morrison, who's an absolute superstar, and play the way he did, just incredible stuff from Leonard Moore.
I mean, that's all some elite players he's in company with for the best true freshman season we've seen out of cornerbacks as well. So Leonard Moore has all the makings of being a top 5 to 10 pick in the 2027 NFL draft as of right now. Let's go to the Houston Texans, Dalton, number 25 overall. Who are they going with here?
All right, similar vein to what you said about Kelvin Banks in Seattle. Just get a talented guy in there. Just take him. And for me, and probably some people would be surprised we didn't get this guy off the board a little earlier, but it would be a home run for the Houston Texans, Armand Membu. Look, if he plays right tackle, left tackle, inside, wherever, however you have to shuffle it, the Texans are in that category of teams where you go, look, get the best 5 guys on the field, and Armand Membu would probably, you could argue, be the number 1 guy already right there. Get him on the field, let it rip, right? I mean, look, 3rd highest graded tackle in college football this past season. One of just 5 offensive linemen with 85-plus grades as a run blocker and a pass blocker. Really broke out. The only reason he didn't play left tackle at Missouri is because when he first got there, Javon Foster was already entrenched there, and he was a very good player. But you have to believe in the athleticism. He's fundamentally sound. He got a lot better this year, especially in the run game. A scenario where the Houston Texans trade Laramie Tunsil, get a bunch of draft capital, and come out with Armand Membu, that's an absolute grand slam, and they could really reset their offensive line and protect C.J. Stroud long term.
Like you said, just get the best 5 offensive linemen on the field for Houston, and that probably means taking an offensive lineman at number 25 overall in the actual draft. Armand Membu is not going to be there in the actual draft. He'll probably be a top 10 pick as of right now. But in this all-eligible mock draft, this would be a great selection for the Houston Texans. All right, number 26 overall, the Los Angeles Rams are going to go with Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan, who's in this year's draft as well. Last year, the Rams tried to trade up to number 13 overall, where the Raiders were, to take Brock Bowers. They couldn't do it because obviously Las Vegas wanted to take Bowers himself. So we know Sean McVay wants to get a top-flight tight end in his offense. Could not do it last year. He gets a really good tight end here in Colston Loveland. He runs routes like a wide receiver at 6'6", 248 pounds. And over the last 2 years, he's averaged over 2.5 yards per route run. Only Brock Bowers has more among power 4 tight ends. So Colston Loveland, a very nice consolation prize for Los Angeles after not getting Brock Bowers last year. They get a very, very good tight end prospect here in Colston Loveland.
Gotta love going with the conspiracy there. I do wonder if he fell to a certain range, if they would think about trading up for him too, because you mentioned it. They wanted Bowers last year. They just couldn't get there. They couldn't figure out a trade to make it work. I'm in on this. I think Loveland could be a target for the Rams on draft night, maybe even in a trade up.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the next pick, which is the Baltimore Ravens. Who are they going with here?
All right, the Ravens, I think everybody knows, and it's been mocked, but more than anything on the PFF mock draft simulator by the users, they're taking edge defenders. When they're picking for the Ravens, they're taking an edge defender. I think the best one left on the board here is Mike Green from Marshall. He's in this year's class. I have him edge 2. Very close. I get it with James Pierce Jr. Did you have him 3rd behind Pierce? I don't remember.
A little lower, I think. I like Mike Green a lot.
I mean, he's super talented. Highest graded edge defender in college football this past season. I believe he was the only he was the only edge defender with a 90-plus run defense grade as well.
Yep.
He's got bend, he's got speed, he's super aggressive to the point where sometimes he's got to throttle it down a little bit. A little bit of a lack of length shows up in tackling sometimes, but I think you talk about getting him in this rotation when you talk about Kyle Van Noy is still there, David Ojabo, Odafe Owe. I think you had Mike Green in that mix, and I think he would fit in really well in Baltimore for a team that I believe their edge defenders, I was looking the other day, they were 15th in the NFL in pass rush grade last year, which is decent, right? But when you're going through the playoff gauntlet of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, Joe Burrow, any of these quarterbacks you're going to play in the AFC, you got to get to them. You got to have an elite pass rushing unit. I think Mike Green would bring him closer to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, he definitely would do that. Let's go to the Detroit Lions, number 28 overall. Also going with an edge rusher, not in this year's draft, though. We're going to next year's draft, a guy Dalton kind of teased earlier, TJ Parker, the edge rusher out of Clemson in the 2026 NFL Draft. He had 12 sacks this past season that led all returning Power 4 edge rushers, and he was one of only three returning Power 4 edge rushers who had 80-plus grades as both a pass rusher and as a run defender. He's an incredibly strong player. He was excellent in his true freshman year at Clemson, really good as a true sophomore as well. Has been a great run defender, became a really good pass rusher this last year. I had him as edge 3 in college football, returning to college football, behind Colin Simmons and behind Dylan Stewart. I think TJ Parker, as of right now, is pretty clearly heavy favorite to be the number 1 edge in next year's draft because Simmons and Stewart are both in the 2027 NFL Draft. TJ Parker here would be a guy that I think a lot of teams will be looking at for next year's draft as the top edge off the board. So Lions need a running mate for Aiden Hutchinson. That's probably who we're going to be targeting on draft night. TJ Parker would be a really good fit. And I think Dan Campbell would also love the fact that he's a great run defender while also being a really powerful pass rusher as well.
Boy, that Clemson defense. That's just all I keep thinking about. Watching this Clemson defense in the fall is going to be so much fun. And we might not be done with them yet. We'll see. We give us a few more picks here. This is how darn good that defense is. Dabo Sweeney's there. He's building that thing back up. It was a couple of years down there, but this defense, they were extremely young last year. They're about to get another year of seasoning underneath them. They're going to be a problem in the ACC with that defense.
I'm not going to spoil our predictions for next year's college football season. I'll just say Clemson made the playoff this past season, and they lost in the first round. I have them going a lot farther than that next year.
That's reasonable.
They're bringing back.
Roster. They're bringing back almost everybody.
Yep.
They got to. We'll get into previews. We got all summer for previews, but this Clemson defense is going to feature heavily. Don't you worry. All right. 29, the Commanders.
Yep.
Let's stay in 2026, why don't we? Another true sophomore, not eligible to come out this year. Next year, could be a big-time player. Look, I know Tennessee's in the news a lot lately for all the wrong reasons, but for as much as we're talking about the quarterback situation, their offense, got a pretty darn good defense back there. Not just James Pierce Jr., a lot of guys. Washington has a need at corner here at 29. It's possible they could go with that in the 2025 draft. Let's get Jermod McCoy going from Tennessee. Just a really solid player. Broke out this year as a true sophomore, 9th in the country with an 89.6 coverage grade. You have him CB2? Is he CB2? You have returned
behind Leonard Moore.
Behind Leonard Moore. I mean, man coverage, zone coverage for him doesn't really matter. 4 interceptions, 6 pass breakups last year. Really became the lights-out player on the outside for Tennessee. A defense that I think we thought progressed a lot quicker than we thought it would, especially on the back end where we had more questions than James Pierce and their defensive line. But McCoy was a big reason for that. He's going to be somebody to look for in the CB1 race for next year's draft in 2026. Excellent football player. Tennessee, might have some issues on offense depending on their quarterback situation. But I'll tell you what, with McCoy and some of the other guys they have returning, they're going to be really good on defense.
Yeah, he's an elite athlete as well. He transferred over to Tennessee from Oregon State after a pretty good freshman year at Oregon State. An elite athlete and produced at a high level in the SEC. And I think you mentioned it too, but allowing Mike Samerstill to go back to nickel corners and playing on the outside out of position is a great thing for Washington as well. So love that pick for Jermod McCoy. I think he is, as of right now, the favorite to be CB1 in next year's draft right now. Another guy, though, Dalton, that could be fighting him for that label as CB1 next year is who I'm taking here to the Buffalo Bills, number 30 overall, who just need defensive talent. I'm going with Avion Terrell, another Clemson defensive player in next year's draft, the cornerback from the Tigers. He's the younger brother of A.J. Terrell, who was a former All-Pro corner for the Atlanta Falcons. Still plays for the Atlanta Falcons right now. Just has kind of had a couple rough years here and there, but still a very, very good corner in this league. Bills had the second worst coverage grade in the NFL last year with a 37.7 coverage grade. Adding some top-tier defensive backs, and honestly, just top-tier defensive talent is a must for Buffalo in this year's draft. Avion Terrell, 90.7 run defense grade this past season, 3 forced fumbles as well, and he's still excellent in coverage, leading all Power 4 corners with 14 forced incompletions in 2024. So Avion Terrell, lockdown player for Clemson on the outside, younger brother of A.J. Terrell. He should be following his brother's footsteps from a great career at Clemson to the first round of the draft.
I know, I was just mad. We got Geno and Jeremiah Smith, but I wanted to find a way to get Avion Terrell to the Falcons, and we just couldn't do it. We couldn't.
Yeah, Colin Simmons on the board there.
We couldn't go with him that high. It would have been fun to get him to Atlanta with his brother, but you mentioned it, Buffalo. I mean, this would be the ideal CB2 there, right? Even you have Christian Benford, who they just gave the extension, Taron Johnson in the slot. This is the type of player they need at corner. And again, I would fully expect with one of their first 3 picks, 1 first-rounder and 2 second-rounders, that the Bills are going to attack the cornerback position in an all-eligible scenario. This would be a great pick for them, Avion Terrell.
Absolutely. All right, last 2 picks here. Number 31 overall, Kansas City Chiefs. What are they doing here?
Been so much talk about the Chiefs' offensive line. I could have made a boring pick here and went with one of this year's guys. Josh Simmons is a hot name. Josh Connerly is a hot name. But I felt like having some fun with it, right? Let's talk about the guy who was the number 1 high school recruit at offensive tackle this past year. Committed, surprisingly, to Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. How about Jordan Seaton in the true freshman year he had? Now, I know Colorado's offensive line gets a lot of flack, at times rightfully so. But Seaton showed up in his true freshman year. And after struggling through the first 2 games, look, for the season, a top 30 true pass blocking grade among tackles in the Power 5. You take out the first 2 games against North Dakota State and Nebraska, where the true freshman playing his first 2 games on a team that doesn't run the football at all, right? Yep. After that, he had a top 12 true pass blocking grade as a true freshman in the Power 5.
Yeah.
If Colorado's going to continue to have success post-Shedeur, post-Travis Hunter, all of that, Jordan Seaton's going to be a massive reason. Look, he was the number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the country for a reason. Deion Sanders started him every game last year as a true freshman for a reason. He is super talented, right? They got to work on the run blocking as an individual and as a unit, but I'll tell you what. He's going to be ready to pass protect in the NFL real soon. He's got at least 2 more years of seasoning to go. But Jordan Seaton's somebody, again, in the 2027 class that we're going to be talking about possibly as OT1 in that class. And look, he was OT1 coming out of high school. Deion Sanders found a way to get him to Colorado. I got him here going to the Kansas City Chiefs at 31 in this exercise. And maybe they got to sit him behind Jalen Moore and Jawan Taylor for a year or so to kind of get him ready because he's so young. But I think over the next 2 years, this is going to be the name that we're talking about from Colorado. Amongst all the big names that we're going to talk about, Julian Lewis, 5-star quarterback, and all the other skill players that bring it in the portal. But Jordan Seaton's going to be a huge reason for the success if they're going to keep competing in the Big 12.
Absolutely. Jordan Seaton, for a position at offensive tackle, that is arguably probably one of the hardest to translate over immediately from high school to college because of the physical, how much it jumps physically from the defensive lineman you face in high school to the defensive lineman you face in college. And Jordan Seaton was still fantastic as a pass blocker in his true freshman year at Colorado this past year. I believe he weighed in at 295 in his freshman year, Dalton. I just saw recently he's at 330 now. This guy put on 35 pounds.
If he holds the athleticism through that, we're going to be talking about obviously a major
NFL
prospect.
Build, yeah.
And you got to think about just the pressure of a true freshman at left tackle going in there, protecting Shedeur Sanders in an offense that doesn't have any balance, and everyone knows they're throwing it every play.
And listen, you and
he might have had the highest pressure job in college football.
And you and I love Shedeur Sanders. We will admit, though, he's not the easiest quarterback to block for either. So he was put on an island a lot with Shedeur Sanders holding on the ball for a very long time as well, breaking the pocket a long time, and still Jordan Seaton still performing at elite level.
Absolutely. I think we're going to be talking about him very soon during this season as one of the best tackles in college football, and it was a huge development from Colorado's season, along with all the big names, Shedeur and Travis and everything, even the defense improving. But Jordan Seaton, again, he's going to be a massive reason if Colorado's success continues that it does.
Yeah.
Because the offensive line, it's still going to be in the spotlight no matter who the quarterback is, right? It's still going to be in the spotlight, and he's got to be the anchor of it.
Any thoughts? I know some people might be wondering, okay, well, I've heard a lot about Caden Proctor and Francis Mauigoa in next year's draft who haven't been taken yet in this draft. Is any thoughts to those guys here at number 31? I still agree I would take Seaton here over them, but any thoughts with those 2 guys there?
Some thought. I think you're talking about 2 guys who are very raw athletes, right, that still need some refinement, especially Proctor at Alabama, and I'm curious to see where that goes in a second year under Kalen DeBoer, and this year not flirting with going back to Iowa and then back to Bama again and doing all that. I think settling in year 2 of Kalen DeBoer's offense, I'm really intrigued with Proctor. I think Mauanoa is an excellent run blocker, super aggressive. You can see some of the highlight reel blocks he makes. I think for both of them, just adding that refinement. But Seton taking on that pressure and producing like he did as a pass protector in that situation as a true freshman with all that scrutiny on him. And again, your favorite thing, number 1 offensive tackle recruit coming out of high school, that's going to land him pretty high as long as he keeps producing in a couple of years in 2027.
I think Seton's already a better pass blocker than Proctor and Mauanoa, and they're both a year older than Jordan Seton, too. So I think that's a good call there, especially when you're trying to protect Patrick Mahomes back there, too. You got to get good pass protection for him. All right, number 32 overall, the Philadelphia Eagles here on the clock. Could have gone a number of ways here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to go with another guy who's in the 2025 NFL draft. Might not even be a first-round pick, the way the consensus board has it shaken out right now. But in this mock draft, what we would do, I would take Luther Burden III, who's still, for me, a top 15 player, I believe, in this draft. He is a really dangerous player after the catch. 50 forced missed tackles after the catch over the last 2 years. 3rd among all receivers in the country. 1,097 yards after the catch over the last 2 years. 4th most in the country. You already have A.J. Brown. You already have Devontae Smith. Jahan Dotson's currently your number 3 receiver right now, who is, an okay player overall. But if you get a guy like Luther Burden III in there and have Dotson as your number 4 receiver, that's probably the best receiving core in football, honestly. So I'll take Luther Burden III.
Yeah, it's always something I've thought about of them. And I know they get a lot of 2 tight ends, and obviously they run the football a ton behind that offensive line. But getting that 3rd outside weapon, either 1, to just get a true slot threat like Burden, or 2, to get another outside, maybe another X type of threat to get Devontae Smith into the slot. The Eagles last year, for everything they did right, which was a lot, they won the Super Bowl, 3rd lowest slot receiving grade in the league.
Yeah,
Luther Burden would be a solution to that. And you talk about all the RPOs and everything he does after the catch would add a dimension, one of the very few dimensions they don't really have in their offense. And look, the way things are going with Burden's draft stock, it might be a realistic pick that they could make that pick. You mentioned it, Jahan Dotson. They made the trade for him. I think he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl, if I remember that.
He was ruled
or
down.
He was tackled
right
down
below,
at the 1.
Before, yeah.
Oh, that hurts. Oh, yeah, the anytime touchdown.
The first touchdown bet. Can you imagine that, too?
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
dude.
That's
I remember someone had
right
that
there.
first touchdown bet, and they would have won like $20,000 off of it, and it just was ruled overturned. But
either way, it's one thing I have thought about is the Eagles getting a 3rd wide receiver in there, and Burden would make some sense, especially when you consider they don't have a ton of after the catch in their offense. Burden would add that instantly.
Absolutely. All right, that wraps up our 2025 all-eligible mock draft, where everyone in this year's draft is eligible to be picked in the 2026 class, and even the 2027 class is eligible to be picked as well. Appreciate you guys all for watching this video. And, of course, we're going to do more mock drafts, actual mock drafts for 2025 NFL draft, too. For anyone who's saying, oh, this is pointless or anything like that, listen, it's the PFF College Football Show, all right? We're trying to show you guys who we like in college football, returning in college football for next year and even the year after that as well, compared it to this year's draft as well. So, appreciate you guys for watching, and we got plenty more content coming out. We have I believe our top 100 big boards for the 2025 NFL Draft coming out this Thursday during the live show as well. This Thursday live at 1 p.m. our top 100 big board for this year's draft. And of course, more draft content coming next week as well before the live PFF draft show that Dalton and I will both be on for day 1, day 2, day 3, and even the recap show on Sunday will both be on that. As well, so make sure you guys subscribe to the PFF NFL show so you get all of that access to that content as well. But for Dalton Wassman, producer Eli back there, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys next time.